Okay, great. Welcome everyone to the next episode of Dumb Geometry, number 3. This is, it's been a while and I think we are really happy to be back. And we decided to kind of extend our previous conversation on games into this episode. And this time I think the idea would be that we talk about specific games in more detail and kind of maybe, unravel some of the implications when it comes to politics and when it comes to architectural design or even just general ideas about the world. I think recently we both played the game Disco Elysium, which is a few years old, but it just came out in a new format, which has like the full voiceover, and the game is quite extensive. It has like 1 million, I think more than 1 million words of dialogue and textual descriptions. So they really did a fantastic job in actually making an entire game kind of voiced, right? But I think what is really interesting about the game to me is there are many, many things, but one thing is that this is kind of a role-playing game with kind of minimal combat in a way, right? And it's mostly about dialogue, ideas, and politics. And I think it has an extremely European literary background, which is something that I enormously appreciate, as you know, from our last conversation. I think we were talking about, The Last of Us and all these like games coming from the kind of the American worldview, right, or the ideology. But I think Disco Elysium is clearly influenced by, world literature kind of movement that's really big in Europe and also in the I think in many other countries except in the US and probably Great Britain. So I don't know what you thought about it. I mean, we can kind of get into it a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, so it's good we're doing a part 2 because last time it ended up going into our personal traumas related to architecture. I think we should stop ourselves immediately when we do that, and we will for sure. But we stick to particular games and then we talk around it. No, Disco Elysium for me is incredibly interesting. I've played it very little, like for maybe a couple of weeks at most, but it's incredible to me the way they've set up, amongst other things, the way they set up the faculties of a person.
Right.
A few things that bother me is that it feels a bit parametric in its setting. So all these faculties are related to each other, and they dictate how the world will end, or how the world will begin, or how you will die, or how you will catch things, etc., etc. But it's still interesting to see how you can take a setup like that and put enough grain in it in order for it to step out of being like a game of being predictable or not. And this is, and then in the realm of computer games in general, like this idea that this is a role-playing game and not about killing people, etc. So this is already, it's a win on my side.
Totally. I think, to me, what you're saying is very interesting, because I think what I like about it is that it's a narrative-driven story game, but you don't have to really like the story in a way. I think the story itself is kind of a classic, murder mystery, let's say. But what I kind of really appreciated is the building, or let's say the world building, or the world making, however you want to call it, and just the sheer depth that they were able to invoke through the words, and through also because the visuals are limited to like one small part of this city, and but the whole idea of like the post-colonial politics, and clearly, obviously, many of the themes invoked are basically direct. They have direct correlations to our world, and I think especially the experience of the, let's say, post-communist space and the space of the post-colonial world. And I think this is, to me, truly kind of an interesting kind of starting point for the entire thing, because most of the games that we talk about are either fantasies based on the first world experience, right, of some kind, or they are, I mean, most of them are like that, right? And I think this is one of the games that explicitly tries to overturn that kind of politics, right? And then kind of really produce another idea of the world. And I think to me, what was mostly really interesting there was, you know how we don't even have to talk about games to notice that, like if you take Lord of the Rings, for example, which is like high fantasy setting, elves speak in kind of British accent, right? The dwarves speak in like Scottish or whatever, and and then like some kind of humans, they speak in like Midwestern US or whatever, and it's always this. You get this like incredible formula, which always works because the audience has been trained to understand it. Every other game, many RPG games have the same problem. You always have the same cast of characters, and the roles have been assigned exactly. And what Disco Elysium does, I think, quite magnificently, is that these roles are thrown out of the water. There is a variety of European accents with people speaking weird kind of English pronunciation, which I really personally love because I'm one of those guys, right? Like, so, talking about representation, many people talk about, oh, I don't feel represented. You know what? I don't feel represented in many of these games, but this is one of those where I really did feel. But I mean, beside that, as you said, let's not talk about the personal stuff, right?
Personal dramas.
Yeah, I think beside that, I think this idea that you can build a world and imagine a different kind of grounding, of framing of that reality from what has been given to you through these recipes. I think, to me, that's a fundamental idea, and I really just want to like.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. But but I think if it had stopped there, then it would have become cheap. A little.
That's right. Jump.
But it goes on and it does it at a much deeper level by the characters themselves being slightly schizophrenic. So, for example, the inspector and then Dick Mullins, who is this guy, and then there's a particular image for the character, presented to that particular character in many instances. We, as well as the controller of the game, we are presenting images of certain characters on top of the NPCs that are present there.
Right.
So it's I think this is why the game is super smart in playing this idea of a schizophrenic identity, which is why it's relatable to all of us, which is why it's relatable to all kinds of characters, because there is no such character to a person. So we have certain postures, we have certain the voice acting plays a great role here. So we have an idea that this is a person, but that we cannot understand it, or we cannot understand the person themselves.
I mean, I totally agree with you. I just want to say that to me, that was who I am in the game, or who this cop is. To me, that was the most unimportant thing. In the entire, because I don't really care about who someone is. This is something that I think is brilliant to me. It's like, as you said, everything is so decentralized and pulling in its own direction that you understand there is no self in a way. You have to make it from pieces of things that don't make sense, so that they don't come together. And that's kind of, I think, to me, the beauty of it, that you can construct your own version in a way, right? And I think one of the things that that really stood out in the process was of playing. It was like at the beginning, there is all this a bit cliched kind of stuff around like, oh, you don't remember who you are. Your limbic system is talking to you, this like deep voice, and which is, it's a good way to start. It's kind of a hook, but it gets old pretty soon, I think. This kind of like super extremely disjointed stuff. I think what is interesting is that once you get through a few of these stories that happen, you realize that doesn't really matter. I think it's more about what kind of world are you constructing, what kind of relations, and what are you instantiating in the world. That really, to me, was amazing to see that. And also there is like a chance component, which I really like, which breaks down that, I think, determinism that you were talking about.
Yeah, and then the absolutely. And so along these lines, what becomes super interesting in this setting is how do you call it a word? How does it become consistent? If all of this schizophrenia is happening around you, if all the spaces are somehow oddly related to the characters who are present within them, etc. So it's all kind of vibrating around these things, and then these things become unimportant as you said, like the identity of the cop or the identity of each particular one, because you're out of the murder mystery already by the time you've gone through like 2 seconds of that. And also the kind of fetish of the different faculties talking to each other.
Yes, I mean, to me that was interesting. This like internal, multi-faceted dialogue between these things. But it's interesting in the sense that they make the responses from these faculties stereotypical. Exactly.
So it's completely expected, but there I think lies the humor, and I think what one of the things that binds this world together is just humor. So it is set, within this post-colonial or pre-colonial setting. It goes either way, and then this.
Well, I mean, quite. I think quite directly, it's influenced by the Eastern European experience of the communist era, right? Like, and there is even a kind of a fantastic parody on Marx, a guy called Kras Mazov, which is. You at one point you find like a bust of him, and you learn about Mazovian socioeconomics, which is a really fantastic like side story. But I think therein, I think that's the humor. Obviously, it's like a parody a little bit, but there is a lot of commitment to figuring out what's happening, politically. And I think that's the strongest part of the game to me, because you don't have to maybe declare what kind of person you are politically, but you are given an opportunity for that. But I think you will figure out what is offered. You will have a few options, and you will understand like how they relate to our world, basically, right? Which I think is really interesting, because it also, the city itself is in control by the outside forces, like some kind of coalition, right? And that's because the revolution in the city was kind of shut down, right? So I think there is a lot of really interesting things there. One thing that maybe I don't like politically is that you have to play as a cop, which to me that's an interesting kind of conundrum, right? You're a cop, but you're an amnesiac, so you can choose whatever you want to be.
Yeah, there again, I see this stereotype emerging as well. And then your partner, it's the same thing. It's like Holmes and Watson and this and that. So it's very similar. So I think they're always playing with these stereotypes, and then the kid on the street block. So
Oh yeah, Kuno. I like that guy. That's like the craziest. And I also like what Kim says about Kuno. Like, I'm not gonna get into this. You know, this is some other force that I don't want to play. I really like that like line because like it's really like that. Sometimes you're exposed to pure psychotic energy by some people, and I think you know.
Through this cop character, I think they really incentivize the exploration aspect. And so how do you locate a person within this world? And then in that sense, then it had to be a cop, and not just a cop, but a stereotype of one.
Right.
That it becomes right in line. And then what's also interesting is about the, how it's constructed, like the whole kind of environment.
But it's very beautiful, very beautiful.
Super
well,
cool.
my favorite, I think, storyline is the one where you're building you're helping four people to build a dance club for Nordic dance music inside an old church, which is, I think, one of the best storylines. And the church has a point near kind of the top where the reality, any kind of reality disappears. It's like a really interesting. It's one of the best, I think, stories, and it happens quite late in the game, actually. And I think the other story that is really an incredible one is the story of the cryptid story, right? Which is you meet the Lena, the zoologist's wife, in the first scene when you go down into the bar, but this goes all the way to the end, and there is like an incredible story about these kind of weird animals that should not exist in a way, and but eventually you kind of figure out the truth about that, which is quite remarkable, I think. So I mean, just in terms of world building and the idea of how you construct something like this, it's amazing what they have done, and the depth to which they were able to kind of go into and kind of avoid cliches as much as possible, right? I think the cop cliche is one that is there for the gameplay because it's like a detective mystery. But the story really avoids a lot of this. It just brings, to me, that's the highest quality of the game. It really brings this love of world literature. I don't know how else to describe it. If you spend your youth, reading authors from around the world, and you kind of believe in this idea of the world literature, I think this game will be very interesting to you.
Absolutely, and they drop in references here and there like nothing.
It's not provincial at all. This is the opposite of provincial, something we spoke about last time. The incredible provincialism of some of the games that, or even not to mention like TV shows and stuff, that was fun. Did you play something else in the meantime?
Yeah, quite a few things. But another thing about Disco Elysium.
Oh yeah, let's go for it.
With this beautiful environment that they built, it's insane how far they let the dialogue take over. Because most of the time in this game you spend reading. Right?
So absolutely, yeah.
But it's really like, and this I really like a lot because then it's not the performativity of the graphics that are at play. Even though in this game it could have left like that.
This is true.
Yeah,
this is true. But I do think that sum total, it's also there is maybe a few environments only there. Like if we talk about just the screens, I don't know if there's like 20 different screens or something. which is so that it's actually quite a constrained world. And most of and you're totally right, most of the building is done through the text, right? They could have done more, I guess, through visuals as well in terms of just the scope of it. That's what I would, maybe one of the things that I coach. I think it's a pretty constrained space, even though a lot of things happen,
Yeah, but even within this, I think what's remarkable is that they can discretize these spaces. So it's because it is continuous, huh? But then these borders they set up for different characters, they start becoming differentiable. They start becoming dissectable, and then that's why the world remains rich nonetheless.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's but in many ways, I mean, after playing something like Cyberpunk or any kind of open world game, this feels more like a children's book type of even though it's like loaded with amazing ideas, but you can feel that it's almost like cardboard book that has like 20 pages maybe. So, and obviously they're a small team, and I guess when they do our next one, it's gonna be bigger and all of this. But it's just it's just their impression.
That's sufficient right now.
Totally.
And that's remarkable. As also for the game studio to kind of stop at that and not
That's
because
true.
it's not showing off ever almost. Huh? But
That's
like,
totally true.
Yeah, with these game studios, like for example,
I mean, the graphics are beautiful. I mean, everything is hand drawn. It's incredible how it works. And it's made in Unity, and there is, if you dig a little bit, you'll find basically even the plugins they're using are not a secret, right? In a way. And it's kind of for someone who knows a little bit about that, it's kind of clear how they put it together. There's like a dialogue plugin that they use that's quite famous. And the interaction model that they're using with these kind of highlightable items is obviously well known from games, but there's also something that you can connect to certain things that also from Unity side. So
and that just technically it's not a challenge, huh? But it's a challenge, and how you make anything.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's where the question of role playing in that game is quite interesting, and the system that they developed. They have like a 6-sided die, I think, like a normal one, the box one, right? And they're using 2 of them to kind of decide things. But the actual, the character features are quite. This is the best part. This and the thought cabinet, which are these kind of thoughts that you can have suddenly, and then you kind of develop them through time. And you have, while you're developing these thoughts, you have some minuses, right? You're basically kind of have problems in a way, right? But once you develop, you gain a new ability or something. And this is the best part, because I think that's an unexplored territory for RPGs. Like the human psyche as an RPG system is a fantastic idea. We should definitely have more of that.
But then these things always make me a little bit uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely. But
the
properties they have are quite amazing. And I know what they thought about, like Inland Empire or things like this. Just the names and the descriptions and what they do is quite amazing.
Oh, that's the thing. So it's always this. I'm just thinking in terms of the structure it implies, huh?
Right.
Or what it says about how you learn things, or what it says about how you behave in the world. And then
would be interesting to know more if they were actually influenced by some systematic school of thought, or if it's kind of intuitive what they did.
I think this is in the air, huh? So this is pure cybernetic thinking. So it's really a branch model, and then it's everything is if you understand it well enough, you can control it. So it's I think it's in this realm of modeling the brain that we can make.
Modeling it as a an interconnected system of parts that are knowable, right? And maybe that's where the chance comes in to destabilize that.
No, the thing is, this is all games. Huh? So this is SimCity as well.
Well, SimCity is system dynamics, which is kind of a different.
It's coming from the cybernetic.
Oh, absolutely.
Phil Wright also talks about it. It's Phil Wright, right? I always make.
He talks. SimCity comes from Jay Forrester, actually, in his book called Urban Dynamics. And Jay Forrester was an incredible character because he was the originator of the World 2 model that was presented in the 60s in one of the in the what was it called, Club of Rome conference, when they had the limits to growth. The kind of the prediction of the collapse of Western civilization was actually modeled as a system by Jay Forrester. And I mean, I think this is actually a fascinating history, right? So, and cybernetic thinking, I think, should come back in some ways. I think, because at least it can account for complexity. At least, especially systems thinking, it can kind of account for things that we have lost. But obviously, it's kind of dangerous for its political implications and other things.
That's the thing, because the cybernetic thinking is completely in line with the mechanisms of control. So it's not a different game technically versus psychologically, because this is completely in line with what's it called, this Cambridge Analytica, these kind of setups. So there's no way that it can be helpful, because if you model the world in such a manner, then these mechanisms of control come automatically.
Right, but what is the alternative to modeling the world in that manner? That's the question to me, or at least I haven't seen someone trying to model the world in that way.
I think that's the game today, because it's how do you do that? I think the first step would be to kind of snap out of this game, because this game is ruining the world.
Well, I think to kind of walk it back a little bit, I think the system dynamics approach that is behind some of these things is a specific way of thinking about the world, right? And about modeling, first and foremost, complex phenomena that has to do with this idea of kind of modeling stocks and flows, rather than producing feedback loops where one thing can depend on another, and you kind of have a more connected overview. But I mean, the way that this has been used is also, I mean, that's where the rub lies. I think it's for example, you look at SimCity, it's a very constrained model of how this works. But it is a model, right? And it's not a metaphor.
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying. I understand what you mean, and I also, there is this other video that I'm gonna send you, where a guy talks about the hidden politics in SimCity, and exactly this idea. The question is is there an alternative modeling that we know about?
These models today, the probabilistic models, are on the other side of this game, because they're precisely not about control. And then it's because then these things then start to become concretized with AI, with machine learning, etc. So it's all about dealing with probabilities, but not predictive. So it's not. It's not about understanding things. It's about zoning it in a way.
Well, I mean, that would be great to learn about that actually, because I'm kind of deep into this research right now for a number of projects, and especially it has to do with this idea how games are designed on a system level. A system designed for games is actually exactly about what we just now said about Disco Elysium, that it has a system that is being disrupted by chance. That's exactly how it's designed in a way. You have a system-based approach where you establish poles of stuff that you have and kind of transitions between states, and then you basically can then insert probability into it, obviously. But if that's what you're saying, then this is already part of that modeling process. What I'm saying is there is not another. I don't know about a totally new fundamental way to model a complex system that really can show you like emergent effects from the system itself. And there is not a metaphor. There is not a description. There is actually a model that works, or that produces results.
So that's so I think these this systems thinking at large, it's really that there is that it's based on predictability. That it and the end of the line is 1 or 0, and so it's really
like a zero sum, you think?
Yeah. So it's So it's what you're judging is always how accurate this is to predict a certain state.
Right. But the conditions are already set by the model, and that's where the real politics is. That's the bias. Well, I understand that, right? I mean, this is exactly the critique that we can all have about it, and this is the core. But my question would be, in that case, like if we don't do something like this, I think 9 out of 10 cases, we are back into linear thinking and cause and effect relation, which is completely what drives politics, I think, today. And then 1 out of 10, we're back into some kind of magical thinking about the world and pure, which is dangerous, or at least it's a question. Like, what is that?
Because that's at the level of common sense. So
exactly.
Yeah, if you go a bit more into, for example, the mechanisms of games, then it's systems thinking, and then it's Cybernetics 101. And then if you go a bit further, then into the state of the art mathematics and physics at this point, then it's quantum mechanics, where things can never be understood. So it's the complete description of a thing is just not possible. And I think this is what these probabilistic thinking, it tries to deal with. So it's always about dealing with things and not towards an understanding or an activation of something. I think this is in line with cybernetic thinking.
Right. So I think I totally agree with your assessment. I think you're totally right. The thing is, let's say we just look at it from the point of view of urban design, let's say, right? And if you take same city as kind of an example of what can be done through systems thinking, where you actually have a working model, which is completely heuristic based. It's like imperfect, it's limited, it's constrained. Still, it's a model. It's not a drawing or a diagram or a map. That's what I'm saying. It's more than like I remember back in the school when we did like urban stuff. You go in a city, you start mapping things, and you come up with a drawing, with it registers some kind of reality. Which is, what do you do with that stuff now? Right. So what I'm getting with this is, I think unless we can come up with a new way of modeling, but really modeling something, then I think we are stuck in this positivist idea that is behind the systems design, which I think goal-oriented. I mean, everything that we spoke about before, it applies here. It's goal-oriented. It's problematic. It always leads to an outcome.
And then it's funny as well with SimCity that it comes at the exact same time as Revit, as the birth of Revit. They're exactly in the same line. And
probably made by the same people. No, that's really. Will Wright is a genius.
So now this space is saturated with Revit, and we all kind of don't like it. Not really all, but like the practicing people like it, and the other ones don't like it because it's cancer or something like that. But
it's like
in that sense, I completely agree. Like there is no other model. And
the other model, conceptually, is aesthetics or art. Just going away from.
It's art cannot be a model at all.
Exactly, this is true. But I mean, model of thinking towards the problem. This is what I meant. Model in a different way, I guess.
Yeah.
But I totally. I mean, I know what you're saying. I think this is at the core of what I'm trying to figure out right now for a few things. It's like, how do you? There are tools you can use to actually model complex phenomena, and then to simulate complex phenomena. They're all based on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So, but is there something else? I think that's where maybe the machine learning was.
The thing like for simulation is precisely that. So there is something to compare with. And then, for example, graphics are all that. So it's either in the realm of art, or on the technical side, it's completely systems thinking, or it's completely towards comparison with a photograph or something like that.
Oh yeah, well, I mean that's like a media theory angle, which I also appreciate this angle, But I think on the other end, to me, the kind of critical question is like, what is a model for? Right. So I have this like agenda that I want architecture to be, again, a cosmological practice,
Yeah.
And this is at the core is the question: what is a model? And if we can have a say as architects, what are models today, and how to work with them? Because I think that's what we know how to do. We know how to work with models.
Yeah, I agree. And at some point, drawing was such a thing.
At some point, drawing was such a thing. Exactly. You were able through a drawing to represent the grounding of the world and the world, as Campagna was saying in that podcast. They're not reality, but the world.
Yeah.
That which is sensible, that which is framed by your own faculties.
And it was essential that it's not real. It's
essential that it's not real.
Because thereby, then there's the abstraction. So there has to be an abstraction in order for that to happen.
But the world is an abstraction, right? I started intensely disliking this word abstraction, to be honest, because I think architects throw it around like it's peanuts, but it's like, this is something, I mean, and most of them, they really come from this side, like the history of representation.
Oh yeah. That's just utter trap. Like
abstraction is something a bit more than that, actually.
Yeah. What do you do without abstraction?
I mean, right. And which is, interestingly, in Disco Elysium, there is no abstraction component, but there is conceptualization, one that you can.
All right. Yeah.
Right. Which is kind of interesting to me. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Right game.
Well, the faculties of a man, as they are saying, they don't include. There is no abstraction faculty, right? Or is there? I think there isn't actually. Wait, check.
No, in the game for sure there isn't in the faculties of man, but yes. But then they also have logic, rhetorics, and like what was it? Visual calculus and these kind of things.
Yeah. Because visual calculus is the best. I mean, I really love that faculty. I thought that was amazing. And also the conceptualization one, I think I like that.
Yeah. But that's the thing. So they collapse these things a little, not a little. Sorry, not collapse, but discretize them to a humorous level. So they push it one notch up, I think. So it doesn't. It's not purely parodic. Or
Yeah. No. It's a genuine effort. I think it's not. It's not a joke.
Yeah.
That game is not a joke for sure. And it's clear. This is what I like about it. It's actually, people actually doing stuff, man. It's amazing. When you see that, you're like, okay, this is an actual work of art. I'm in the presence of something where I can, learn something, or I can kind of experience something that I haven't seen before. This is not a joke, and it's not made by a committee where they kind of they expect you to go through. I've seen a few games now like this. Clearly, they're made by a committee that wants to teach you something, right? Like The Last of Us has a component of that.
Oh yeah,
for sure. You can hear it in the language. They're telling you what you should think, right, about something, and it's usually something political. So, no, I think this is a genuine effort. This game to really understand stuff, to ask like serious questions about the world, I think. So kudos to these guys, man. They're amazing,
Yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic. Then just to carry on from there, when I tried the new Unreal Engine 5.
Me too. Yes.
It's ridiculous. Wow. Like how?
Well, obviously, technically, it's incredible. It's gonna change everything. What I didn't like though is that, as I kind of predicted, they cannot do anything about the sizes, like project sizes. Did you know that sample project size is 100 gigabytes?
Yeah, 100. And this is I really thought I did something wrong when it started downloading that.
Exactly.
100. I had to clear away some things.
Right. Makes you think. And of course I know that it's like a over the top presentation of the entire world that they built from these like 3D scan, mega scan things, obviously, right? But the scene that you can play inside is so short. And you're thinking, like, is this the future of gaming? Like, and imagine like a game that we could actually do something like this. Like it would be 50 terabytes, right, for the entire storyline or something. Obviously, it never would have happened like this. But yeah, it's kind of funny. But graphically, it's incredible.
No, it's really, I was just amazed by how smooth it was, how the real-time reflections work, like everything, it's just right on point, full-on photorealism. But and then they put this horrible little short sequence in it, and then you're like, okay, it does.
Hey, no, that's not the point. That's like a showcase, obviously, and it tells you a little bit about their imagination.
Yeah.
Which is, it's fine. That's what games are mostly. They're like this incredible entertainment where you have a formula that works and just go for it.
And then what they said as well now. So I watched this guy, the Epic Games guys, talking about the changes that they expect gonna happen. They're saying, how?
No, Epic is an incredible company.
Yeah,
because they're giving this, they're giving the source code, man. You can just get Unreal Engine source code, and that's it.
Insane.
It's brilliant. Really brilliant.
They're saying now the normal maps will slowly die.
Yeah,
it's incredible for me.
One of the funniest stuff that I saw was on Twitter, where when they were presenting metahumans, and there was this guy who is probably a rig artist or, who works with reading characters. He was like, what does this mean? Does this mean that we are all out of job now? Like, what happens to us riggers? And I'm thinking, man, being a rigger, rigging characters for a living, like, and how do you not understand that this job only exists because they didn't figure it out computationally already? I mean, it's so weird that people are just so caught up in these like traditional ways of thinking about what it means.
And it began and ended in a period of 20, 30 years or so.
Yeah, and it was only there to begin with because it couldn't be solved computationally, right? I mean, that's going to happen to everything because it's just like how it goes, right? Like being a rigger doesn't exist. It's like a borrowed job. It's weird. But it's a person's life, so obviously they'll have to. People I think need to understand, need to think about like what they're getting to with this stuff. Also in architecture.
No, absolutely in architecture. I think right now we all feel like these riggers. I think there's a lot of us. It's really because half the stuff is taken away by the construction industry. Not half, like let's say 80% of that is taken away by the construction industry. The other half is given to a few that is not public. So it's there's no jobs. No jobs for artistic practices.
Well, that's why we are on YouTube talking about games, right?